Good afternoon, and welcome to the second annual U of M-Flint DEI Summit, which is happening virtual, no longer due to pandemic-imposed restrictions, but in an effort to be inclusive to our remote workers and learners. My name is David Luke. My pronouns are he and him, and I serve as the Chief Diversity Officer here at U of M-Flint. I am a youngish-looking cisgender multiracial man with short hair, a dark brown beard. I'm wearing a black and white checkered shirt, black bow tie, and black framed glasses. My virtual background is blue with UM-Flint Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the upper left corner of the screen. The idea for this DEI Summit is inspired in part by our colleagues in U of M Ann Arbor, who held their summit this morning. Hopefully some of you were able to view it. This DEI Summit is an opportunity to learn more about some of the activities going on at U of M-Flint. The basic outline for the session is shown on the screen. We'll begin with a welcome and land acknowledgement, followed by revisiting our campus vision and reminding us all of the 8 broad goals outlined in our DEI Strategic Action Plan. We provided you with the DEI annual report over the summer, but our work has continued since then. And I think we can all agree that even the most compellingly written annual report is not necessarily a page turner. As such, I've asked some of our many colleagues who are working on specific strategies and key initiatives to speak about some of the work they're doing and highlight some of our positive movement. First, let's begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the land the University of Michigan-Flint occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary homeland of many indigenous nations, most recently the Anishinaabe, including the Potawatomi, Chippewa, Ojibwe, and Ottawa tribal nations. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide, forced relocation, and removal of many from this territory, and we honor and respect the many indigenous people, including those of the Three Fires Alliance, who are still connected to this land. As we look at some of the work that's underway, it's important for us to recognize that diversity, equity, and inclusion are institutional priorities. As such, they're reflected in what we say and do. Research indicates that the most successful DEI initiatives are those that are infused in the broader strategy. Doing this not only signifies the importance of DEI, but it also is associated with better results. Talking about DEI has become ubiquitous in higher education and in other industries as well. Words matter, but talk alone is cheap. There's a quote by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that refers to a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds. We must not operate this way. So DEI must be a part of our strategy and continue to be institutionalized in how we operate. And finally, as U of M-Flint embarks on a strategic transformation to ensure fiscal stability and programmatic relevance in the future, diversity, equity, and inclusion will remain prioritized throughout the process. We have an opportunity as we transform to be more deliberate about how we infuse DEI into our operations, with the understanding that, like most other institutions similar to ours, we weren't initially created to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Thus, the pending transformation presents an exciting opportunity with regards to DEI. So with that context, I want to introduce someone familiar to us. In my role reporting to Chancellor Dutta, I meet regularly with him and get to hear his thoughts, opinions, and ideas on diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education. I often leave these meetings encouraged by our leadership's commitment to institutionalizing DEI at U of M-Flint. And pleased by the way our conversations help advance, reinforce, challenge, and ultimately improve our strategies. All that is to say, I regularly hear Deba's thoughts on DEI, but many of you do not. So I've asked him to share some brief remarks for our second annual DEI Summit. Now, I could go into reading his bio, but at this point, many of you know that's not his preference. So if you're curious, you can read his bio from the university website. But with that, please welcome the 9th Chancellor of the University of Michigan-Flint, Chancellor Deba Dutta.
Well, thank you, David. I'm very pleased to join all of you here. It's our second annual DEI Summit. As was mentioned by David, it occurred in Ann Arbor this morning. And I very much appreciate the partnership that we have established with Ann Arbor in DEI, and I look forward to it bearing fruits. Now, as you know, our DEI office is 2 years old. I want to thank the members of the DEI committee. It's a large committee, as it should be. It's inclusive, and I encourage every time I meet or talk with David, I say, let's find a way to broaden the campus footprint of the DEI committee. So for those of you who are listening in, please when the opportunity comes, please participate in this committee. We want to hear from you. I also want to thank the co-chairs, Roy Barnes and David Luke. So thank you for the work that you're doing. As all of you know, and it was on the agenda, the strategic action plan, which was developed over 8 months, I believe, in 2020, is guiding the work, and much progress has been made. It's not my intention to call out each and every progress, but I do want to highlight the Success Mentorship Program. It's a DEI initiative that is very successful. It's growing, and it supports student retention and success. I know you will hear more about this from Chris Deulis and Diamond Wilder later in the program. As was mentioned by David, I want to affirm that as our campus undergoes the exciting strategic transformation that we launched September 23rd, DEI will remain an institutional priority. In fact, I look to this strategic transformation as an opportunity to strengthen and broaden DEI initiatives all throughout the campus. This transformation, as you know, will open up new frontiers, new academic frontiers, new programmatic frontiers for our campus. And we want to make sure through DEI, through this DEI committee and the co-chairs, that we are looking at all opportunities, programmatic, staffing, academic, that we have looked at it from a DEI lens to see what we could do to strengthen DEI across campus. This strategic transformation will take several months. I encourage you to look at the website. I encourage you to participate. I encourage you to give us your feedback. And I encourage you, for those who are deeply engaged in the DEI work, to actually look for ways and suggest ideas through which DEI can be strengthened on this campus. So with that, let me hand it over back to David, and I wish you all a wonderful summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Dutta. I think it's important each year for us to revisit our DEI goals. They're displayed on the screen. These are the collective goals of our campus, and we each play a role in moving toward these goals. All of the activities and initiatives highlighted today connect to one or more of the listed goals. Additionally, we're on this journey together and pursuing these goals simultaneously. Thus, as we work to increase our diversity, we need to ensure that we're also identifying and eliminating barriers and improving the campus climate to welcome more diverse faculty, staff, and students, and not bring them into a hostile environment. We need to work toward all these goals together and at the same time. People often say DEI is everyone's work. What does that mean? While we have a central office as an organizing hub for DEI efforts, no one person or office can achieve all of these goals. DEI, much like our other campus priorities, like supporting student retention and success, requires our collective effort. These are institutional values and priorities. Admissions plays a role in recruiting a diverse student body, and every faculty or staff member that a student interacts with when they're here contributes positively or negatively to that student's persistence and success. Department hiring committees play a role in diversifying the faculty and staff, and every person that university employee interacts with, every policy that they bump up against, and every experience they have contributes to their job satisfaction and ultimately their decision to continue working here or to leave. Certainly, there are other external factors outside of our control, but if we collectively take responsibility for becoming more diverse, equitable, and inclusive as an institution, then we will see U of M-Flint becoming the best it can be. So where are we right now? Here is some data related to our first goal of increasing the racial diversity of our students, faculty, and staff. This data was distributed in the DEI annual report, but I thought it would be worth revisiting to give a snapshot of where we are in terms of our racial diversity at U of M-Flint. DEI is, of course, not only about race. But DEI includes race, and our institution does not reflect the racial diversity of the city in which it resides and whose name it bears. While we have a larger Asian population than the city of Flint, people of color are otherwise underrepresented at U of M-Flint among the student and employee populations, and that underrepresentation is even greater among employees than among students. Note that American Indian, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander and non-resident alien populations were all under 2% and thus are not displayed, but you can see this data in the 2022 annual report or through institutional analysis, and this is publicly available. As we revisit this and other statistics in the coming years in our annual reports and in our annual DEI summits, our goal is to see the student and employee populations begin to more closely reflect our City of Flint demographics. But that's only one of our goals. We have 8 broad goals and a number of initiatives underway campus-wide. I want to give others a chance to talk about some of the initiatives that they're engaged with as we provide an update to the campus. So I want to begin by inviting Beth Kabitsky, Dean of the School of Education and Human Services, and Suzanne Knight, Director of K-12 Partnerships, to talk about some of the work building connections with nearby K-12 schools.
So hello, I'm Beth Kabitsky, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm sitting in my office and wearing a green jacket with light brown hair, depending on what my hairdresser does with it. And first, thank you very much, David. This is very, very important for us to really prioritize this work. And one of the ways we've been doing it in the School of Education and Human Services and across K-12 partnerships is through trying to partner with our local school districts in order to both support the students in those school districts, as well as use it as a tool to recruit future teachers. And so the first example I'd like to give is just the work we've been doing with the Flint community schools. Roughly 37% of the students in those schools qualify for special education support, and they've been looking for more special education teachers. Nationally, the demographic of teachers doesn't reflect the students that they're teaching. There are very few Black and brown teachers to teach in those schools where a majority of the students would look in that way. And so one of the things that we're doing, working with the superintendent, Kevin Jones, is creating a pathway in order to have students in those schools work and towards teaching certification and then move into the University of Michigan-Flint. And I think Suzanne will talk for a little bit about how we do that within the school districts. And I can't hear you yet, Suzanne.
Sorry about that. I needed to unmute myself. So one of the things that we are working on in the Office of K-12 Partnerships is thinking about how we can include area K-12 students in campus life sooner rather than later. So part of that is, as the slide shows, an earlier recruitment for our dual enrollment programs and offering dual enrollment programs also for a broader spectrum of schools, and including particularly those schools that are closest to the university within Genesee County, such as Flint Community Schools, Beecher Community Schools, Mount Morris, but in addition to DEEP or other dual enrollment initiatives, also creating programming that brings students often to our campus throughout the entire school year and making them feel like the University of Michigan-Flint campus is a place where they are welcome and where they belong.
And we're especially committed to this because it is very clear that children in those schools are supported very well when they have teachers that can look like them through their transfer through the schools. And just a final note, we are actually having about 220 students, I think, have registered at this point to attend our campus on a introduction into what it would be to be a teacher, and they'll be here on the 20th.
Thank you, Beth and Suzanne. Now I want to invite another Beth, Beth Manning, Director of Human Resources, to talk about some of the work going on in her area.
Hello, everybody. My name is Beth Manning. I'm the HR director of the Flint campus. I use she and her pronouns. I'm sitting in my office. I'm wearing maize and blue, including earrings maize and blue, and my hair color is typically blonde, unless my hairdresser does something different with it. So I wanted to just mention a few things that we've been doing in human resources for DE&I initiatives. And some of this you may have heard throughout the last year, and some of it you'll maybe haven't heard about, but you will hear about soon. So we started Data People, which is a software project, software program that allows us to be more inclusive in our postings. It provides a shorter posting so that you only get 60 or 80 seconds to grab a person's attention from a posting. So this software package is very helpful for that. And it does tend to target more of an inclusive group. And so we've soft launched that, and we will be doing a larger launch in the next month. So stay tuned for that. Skill Survey is a tool that we use for reference checking, and it's a online system. We've had really good success for that. And it also allows for people to be more anonymous, and they tend to provide a little bit more feedback in that way. So it's been helpful too. This last summer, we completed some compensation benchmarking for our staff positions on our campus, and we tend to do the same thing for faculty coming up here soon. But that was really helpful in that we went with an all competitive, all national, regional, all the markets. We didn't look at just a regional area, because we are not only competing with ourselves in the area, we're competing nationally with jobs. So that was very helpful. We also wanted to mention again, now this hasn't been anything new, but something that we've been doing for at least the last year or so is we have standard job postings automatically going to several different locations. They automatically generate those areas, but we also put in progressive job advertisements for a wider audience. It has been a very tough year and a half for any applicant pool. If you asked anybody across our state and many states across the country, it is very difficult to get those larger pools that we used to. So we really are trying to take a more aggressive approach and a more inclusive approach to getting more candidates, but more diverse population candidates. Our posting to hire processes, just talk briefly about those. We are continuing to streamline those posting to hire processes for more efficiency, equity, inclusion, retention, all different types of things that we can do to help the hiring manager and search advisory committees get from the start to the finish and get an applicant in who's going to be best to fit the job, but also making sure we are being inclusive and we are being very mindful of biases, so that we're being very careful and making sure we are including everybody. We increased and enhanced our partnerships with Ann Arbor in the recruiting department, and we continue to do so. And then we also standardized search committee guidelines for both faculty and staff. Best hiring practices are going to be developed, and those are going to happen over the fall and winter fall this semester and next semester. We introduced, and we've been doing exit interviews for both staff and faculty. We tend to get a lot more participation from the staff than we do for the faculty, but it's been increasing, and we're looking at those in ways of patterns and what we can do better, but also the stay interviews that we haven't launched yet, but we will be launching soon, to say why people stay, so we can maybe reproduce those good things that are happening, so we can retain our faculty and our staff. And then we will have a focus group that is around this topic coming up in the fall semester. So these are just some of the things that we're doing in HR to try to be more diversity, inclusive wise and equity wise. And I'm happy to take any questions. If anybody wants to send me any emails, suggestions, thoughts, feedback, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you, Beth. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some efforts to ensure that our hiring processes are inclusive. I have partnered with Professor Terrence Horgan, the Myron and Margaret Weingarten Professor of Psychology at the University of Michigan-Flint, for this next initiative. Professor Horgan, as many of you know, is an expert in the social psychology of nonverbal communication and implicit bias. Professor Horgan and I worked with a group of dedicated faculty members in 2020 to begin normalizing STRIDE anti-bias training for all search committee members. In this process, we obtained the U of M Ann Arbor STRIDE presentation and adapted it to our university's unique context. While requiring a quick STRIDE anti-bias primer at the beginning of searches is better than nothing, it does not actually embed accountability for inclusivity in the search process. I often delivered these workshops and said something like, I hope this is the beginning of a conversation that continues throughout the search process. But once I left or typically logged off of Zoom, there was no accountability to ensure that the conversation actually continued. In some cases, it may have, but in many, after the brief conversation, the search likely continued, business as usual. DEI work is often about disrupting the business as usual processes that perpetuate inequity in organizations. Thus, upon speaking with colleagues at other institutions and within U of M-Flint, and talking with Professor Horgan, we decided to work to bring an Inclusion Advocates program to this campus. Under this program, our search committees will be structured to include a person specifically trained to mitigate bias in the search process. We're currently developing a training program for the advocates, which fits naturally with other work Professor Horgan is doing. That he is working to create a training manual to be used by students, educators, and universities and companies throughout the US, educating readers how implicit biases, confirmatory hypothesis testing, non-conscious behavioral confirmation, and stereotype threat can negatively impact the hiring and tenure and promotion processes at colleges and universities. Our intent is to roll out this program in the winter of 2023. As we've discussed this in the DEI committee, a number of issues and questions have come up related to how these advocates will be appreciated and compensated for their time and effort, and other more detailed aspects of the program. We're working through those details, looking at similar programs at other institutions, and research on inclusive hiring practices. And as with any initiative, we welcome any feedback that you might have along the way. So next, I'd like to turn things over to Chris DeUlis, the Associate Director for Student Involvement and Leadership, to talk a bit more about the Success Mentorship Program that Chancellor Dutta mentioned. Chris?
Thanks, David. My name is Chris DeUlis. I use he, him pronouns. I am in a virtual background here that is blue with the U of M-Flint logo on it. I'm a young-ish male presenting person with salt and pepper hair, glasses, and wearing a gray overshirt. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Success Mentorship Program. This first year of data is shown there on the slide. I'm going to highlight a couple of key points, but we have a lot of things that we're really excited about. We engaged over 400 students in the program this past year, with 300 new students mentored by 111 continuing students. We saw an overrepresentation from our historically marginalized student groups in those populations. And as is shown in the visual there, we also saw lots of engagement from our first-gen students. We saw a positive difference and continuation between our students that participated in the program versus those that did not for fall 2021 into winter 2022. And we're working on the data for what that means for retention into this year for those cohorts. We had over 56% of the students in highly engaged mentorship. And so that's at least 3 conversations with their mentee regularly so that they were having a lot of interaction there. And then we saw a difference of about 4% in sense of belonging for the students that participated in the program, both as mentors and mentees. A challenge that we did identify, though, is that we saw a decrease in those students' self-efficacy. And so that's something that we're looking to continue to be able to work on this year. As a part of the work that we're doing in the peer mentorship program, we've also expanded this year. And so we will have a broader set of students that'll have access to this program. As we look at the future, we're not only going to be focused on our incoming new undergraduate students, both FIDIAC and transfer as we had, but we'll also be expanding to be able to partner with the Peer Advisors for Veterans Education, or PAVE program, to have a veteran-to-veteran specific program this year, and we'll have we'll have a graduate student mentorship program as well in terms of peer mentorship. So as we get into that data for what that looks like this year, we are in a space where we are really excited to see numbers have continued to grow in that program. And so we have, in our first year program, we started a little bit earlier to help address MELT in the enrollment process. And so we already have over 280 student mentees matched with mentors. They have logged over 2,000 conversations, and 69% of the pairs have logged conversations in the last 30 days. So a couple of key takeaways with that is that 27% of our students that we invited have already been matched up with a mentor. Our graduate students are also really engaged in the program. We have 22 mentors matched with 48 mentees there. And so that shows us that we're seeing engagement at multiple levels. 100% of the pairs have logged a conversation in the last 30 days. There's a lot of interaction there that is really helpful for those students, and they've already started to give us some information around the themes of what that is doing to be able to impact their experience. And then our veteran students, we have 41 mentees matched with 5 mentors. And again, that's in collaboration with some veteran-specific resources around the PAVE program. We wanted to be able to dig a little bit deeper into some of the specifics around some of the identities that those students hold. And so as we look at that, in the peer first-year experience program for those new transfer students and first-time in college students, a couple of key highlights. There's a couple of pie charts there on the screen if you like a visual, but roughly 25% of the mentees in this part of the program are from underrepresented minority populations that we would classify for campus. And so that shows a 1% increase for our Hispanic and Latino population and a 3% increase for our Black and African American students that are mentees. We also saw roughly 27% of our mentees, or our mentors so far for the first year program are from underrepresented minority populations, which also showed an increase in our Black and African American population and in our Asian and Asian American populations. We continue to see a high number of first gen students engaging, and 31% of the mentees are both underrepresented minority students and first gen students. That's over half of our mentors though, that are both underrepresented minority students and first gen students. So we have a lot of intersectional identities that then matter in how students feel seen and are paired up as a part of the process in the near pair pairings that we use for the program. In the next piece here, we wanted to be able to give a different aspect of diversity as we talk about the DEI work. And so as we look at the gender identities of our mentors and mentees, a couple of pieces to be able to highlight. We have an option for the students to be able to share their gender identity in a way that fits for them, if that is male, female, non-binary, or if they want to be able to either add language to what that identity is, or they can classify it as something other. And so we have 2.2% non-binary, 56% female, 20% are male, and then little less than 1% of the mentees are identifying their gender as other. And then on the mentor side, we have about 70% that are female, 20% male, and then the additional piece are non-binary students there. And so this is another aspect that we want to continue to see how that impacts our students to be able to find folks that they can connect with across those identities. As we look at the graduate side of things, we see roughly 42% are from underrepresented minority populations in the mentee side of things, and 20% on the mentor side. And then we also ask the same set of questions around their first gen status. And so over 40% of the mentees are both first gen and underrepresented minority students. And then our mentors, about a third of them are from underrepresented populations. So a little bit of gender breakdown here as well. The interesting piece that students have added for themselves is that they have given language to some more categories of how they shared their identity. So in addition, on the screen there, you'll see the male, female, and non-binary breakdowns that we talked about, but there we also have students that I've identified as intersex. And so that shows up in the pie chart there. And then on the mentor side, we have pretty much a 56-31 breakdown of male, female. So we have a little bit more of the binary side of things there. What we're excited about also is being able to continue to engage with the students and find ways to be able to build on these opportunities, to be able to think about how their identities then impact their sense of belonging. So we'll continue to assess, and hopefully we continue to see those positive results.
Thank you, Chris. Now I want to turn it over to Samara Howe, Director of the Center for Gender and Sexuality, to discuss a couple different initiatives.
Thank you, David. My name is Samara Howe, as David already mentioned. My pronouns are she and her, and I am speaking from a blue background with the CGS logo. I'm wearing green and gray, and I present as African-American woman with Black hair. I wanted to share a little bit with you about Get Inclusive. In the fall of 2021, we launched Get Inclusive for our campus, and this online module platform provides students and staff with information about Title IX, in addition to the DEI, alcohol and other drugs, consent, and information on mental health. And since its inception, we've been able to reach over 2,000 of our staff and students this year with that information. But we know that that's not enough. During the month of October, we recognize Domestic Violence or Intimate Partner Violence Month. And we know that some of those interlapping violence can also occur. We know 1 in 5 college women and 1 in 4 transgender and gender non-binary students will experience unwanted sexual contact during their college career. Pictured above, the photos from our Take Back the Night this past April was where students were able to share their experiences with violence and find restoration and hope and healing. Our guests included Trinae Gonzar, a survivor of the Larry Nassar case, and John Vaughn, a former University of Michigan football player and survivor of sexual assault. So in collaboration with our campus and community leaders, the CGS has launched a campus-wide campaign or initiative called Creating Safer Spaces to engage our campus community on what they can do to respond to sex and gender-based violence on campus. In addition to our confidential advocacy services, we provide year-round training through our certificate programs. Our Healthy Masculinity certificate program is underway currently. And in the winter term, our sexual violence prevention certificate will be available. To access Get Inclusive, we encourage you to visit the UM-Flint CGS website. Just click on our sexual misconduct training tab. And then to learn more about creating safer spaces, we invite you to join on the website as well for Creating Safer Spaces. And during this today and also tomorrow, we have a Creating Safer Spaces table. We're asking folks to share how they're creating a safer space here on the 3rd floor of USYN. I also wanted to spend some time talking to you about some of the initiatives that we have going on regarding menstrual equity. Also, in early winter of this year, student government leaders at that time, Frankie and also Allie, approached CGS and the Intercultural Center asking for support around menstrual equity. The students raised concern over the lack of products available on our campus and noted the need for all students to have access to products. In response to the students' needs, we took action to provide resources in all the restrooms on campus. And this provides additional access so that folks who need the products can receive them. We hope that through this initiative, it will impact our community, especially for folks who are also unable to afford the products due to period poverty. In addition to making products available for emergencies, we have partnered with Wolverine Essentials to have products available, including full-size pads and tampons, but also reusable products such as menstrual cups and discs that are environmentally friendly. Access and education are important in aiding in our campus understanding of this need and equipping students with knowledge on how to care for themselves. To learn more about our efforts to be inclusive, I encourage you to please visit our Gender and Sexuality Toolkit that's also available on Canvas.
Thank you, Samara. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Q Dockery, who is the program manager in the Intercultural Center.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk. So my name is Q. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman with black and red braids currently. I'm wearing a white shirt with black stripes. I am in my office with Halloween decorations in the background. So I'm here to talk about the inclusive teaching toolkit that we are creating, and we're in the final steps. And so this toolkit developed over the course of the year as myself and colleagues have been receiving student feedback around their campus experience. And when we think about DEI and retention, we know that students are spending most of their time in the classroom. So we want to make sure that they're having positive classroom experiences. So over the course of the year, we've just been getting different feedback that's really been about just DEI related gaps, whether the students are seeing in courseworks, around dialogue facilitation when certain topics are coming up, accessibility, and other things. And so myself and David with Laura McLeeman, she couldn't make it, but she is the new director of the TCLT, so the Thompson Center of Learning and Teaching. We felt that it was important to kind of like bring her into this conversation and kind of share the things that we were hearing from students and just kind of think about next steps, right? And so we had this meeting, and from there we were posed with the question, so what do we do now? And so thinking about how we had the trauma-informed toolkit that was done by CAPS along with others, and the Center of Gender and Sexuality toolkit that was also being constructed in the process, I posed the idea that we create an inclusive teaching toolkit that kind of provided faculty and staff with more tools and resources on how to go about certain topics that were coming up in student conversation. And so from there, we decided to, oh, can you go back? Yeah, thank you. formulate a committee. And so we reached out to faculty and staff across campus and kind of asked people to like volunteer their time if they felt interest or if they really were passionate about this area, if they had expertise in this area, to join this committee. We called it the Inclusive Teaching Toolkit Committee. And from there, we had 4 cluster groups. I'll get to those next, kind of what those groups consisted of. We had 2, one person lead each cluster group. So it was me, Dr. Luke, Chip Evans, and Laura McLeeman. And after each group constructed their own section of the toolkit, we then went into peer feedback. So each group got another group's section to review and kind of look at, like, was the information clear? Were there resources missing? Did we feel it could be organized in a different way? And then also from there, we felt that since this was something that was going to impact the student experience, we needed to get students to also peer review the toolkit. So then we provided opportunities for students to provide feedback. And so the main components of the toolkits, and this is definitely something in the future that can be expanded upon and added to, but these were the main themes that we were hearing. So things around inclusive syllabi. So really thinking about how are you setting up your course syllabus that really lets students know that you're there to help them, you're there to be serve as a guide, as well as like the engagement tool, because one of the feedbacks that a student gave was that the way a syllabus is set up can really inform them how engaged they're going to be in the class. Establishing a productive classroom. So really thinking about like creating that safe classroom environment. So using inclusive language, setting up ground rules, different things like that, that not only makes the classroom feel safer, but like lets people know that you can have DEI related topics and conversations in that space. Managing and facilitating difficult dialogue. So as you're allowing DEI into the space, how is that being facilitated? How are you creating space where students can share and reflect, but also be challenged in a way that's productive for their growth and learning? And same thing on the faculty staff end. How are we also doing our own work and doing our own learning as we're going about this process, whether we're interacting with students or whether we're teaching them? And then the last one, accessibility. So thinking about like, is your course material accessible, not only physically, but are you providing audiobook options that have screen readers, different things like that? And another component that's also in accessibility is financial accessibility. And so making sure that your course is accessible to students on the financial end. And so what's next as far as next steps, we'll be putting together webinars for each group, as well as doing additional trainings that are more in-depth per section. So the main 4 sections up there, and then that should be rolled out in around November, December. So look out for that.
Thank you, Q. Next, I would like to turn it over to Melissa Sokovic, Director of the Honors Program, who has leveraged the Programming for Inclusive Excellence funding to enrich our campus through multiple DEI-related events. So, Melissa.
Thank you, David. As David said, my name is Melissa Surkovic. I am the Honors Program Director and an Associate Professor of Education. I use pronouns she, her, and I present as a white woman with long, brown, wavy hair, and I'm wearing a pink blouse. I'm sitting in my office and there's a whiteboard behind me and a bookshelf. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share with all of you how Programming for Inclusive Excellence funds, known as PI funds, have provided our faculty, staff, students, and community the opportunity to engage and grow together on topics related to DEI. I'm going to specifically talk about 3 events that the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion sponsored through PI funds. The first event was a viewing of the documentary Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution, followed by a student-led Q&A with disability rights activist Judy Heumann, which was held in March of 2022. The documentary tells the story of a group of friends who attended a camp designed for teens with disabilities who turned themselves into activists for the disability rights movement and eventually held the longest sit-in in a government building to fight for accessibility legislation. Judy Heumann is an internationally recognized disability rights activist and leader whose story was captured in the documentary Crip Camp. After viewing the documentary, 5 of our U of M-Flint students facilitated a Q&A session with Judy. As we watched the documentary and engaged in discussion, we encouraged attendees to recognize that the activists in the documentary were everyday people and urged attendees to dream beyond our current realities in society and challenge the status quo to create truly inclusive communities where every individual is welcomed and valued. Attendees were moved to tears throughout both the documentary and Q&A. The second event I'd like to briefly talk about is Officer Friendly Day, which was held in April 2022. Officer Friendly Day was a collaboration between the School of Education and Human Services and the Department of Public Safety at U of M-Flint. Officer Friendly Day was a free, family-friendly event to celebrate autism and build relationships between autistic individuals, their families, caregivers, and law enforcement officers. The event was geared toward individuals on the spectrum and their families. It was an opportunity for individuals on the spectrum, their families and caregivers to engage with law enforcement officers, explore their vehicles, and engage in fun activities together. We created Officer Friendly Day to give autistic individuals the opportunity to engage with law enforcement officers and become familiar with their uniforms, vehicles, and job, so that in the event of an emergency, they are familiar with the sights of police vehicles and uniforms, as well as the overall duties of law enforcement officers. To give autistic individuals and families and caregivers the opportunity to ask law enforcement officer questions they have about safety and autism disclosure. To give law enforcement officers the opportunity to interact with individuals on the spectrum, to become more familiar with the characteristics of autism, so that when they are on a call that involves someone on the spectrum, law enforcement officers may be more comfortable recognizing possible signs of autism and engaging with autistic individuals. And to create a safe space and a judgment-free atmosphere for community members on the spectrum and their families and caregivers to be able to engage in a fun family event where each individual is welcomed and valued for who they are. The event was a success and will now be an annual event at the University of Michigan-Flint. Both officers and student volunteers commented on how the event positively impacted their perception of autism. One parent who attended shared with us later that her son used to be scared of the police, but after the event said that officers are good, not scary. Finally, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is generously sponsoring Inclusive Halloween, which will be held in just a couple of weeks thanks to PI funds. Inclusive Halloween is designed for people with disabilities, their families, friends, and allies. Inclusive Halloween is important to our Flint community because many people with disabilities or other medical conditions may not otherwise have the opportunity to trick or treat. For example, those who use wheelchairs or crutches may have a hard time going door to door up front porch steps. Those with autism may become overstimulated or may not be offered candy if they are unable or unwilling to say trick or treat. Those with visual or hearing impairments may find it difficult to enjoy traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating, and those with feeding tubes or severe allergies may miss out if they're only offered candy instead of being offered non-edible treats as well. At Inclusive Halloween, everyone is invited, everyone is included, and everyone is welcomed. It is a safe, judgment-free zone where the entire family can relax and have fun. We currently have 130 volunteers registered for the event and 181 attendees already signed up to the event and expect more in the coming weeks. All these events were possible because of PI funds, not only because the money was available, but because the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion made applying for faculty easy, and the team was exceptional at handling all the logistics around receiving and using the funds. These programs are making a difference not only in our U of M-Flint community, but in our greater Flint community as well. I'm looking forward to hosting more events in the future with the support of these PI funds.
Thank you, Melissa. Next, I'd like to turn it over to our DEI Advisory Committee co-chair, Professor of Sociology and Director of the Accelerated Online Degree Completion Program, Roy Barnes. Roy?
Thank you, David. I use the pronouns he and his. I identify as an older male. I am one of the 5% of the Asian employees here on campus, despite my name. I'm wearing a dark jacket with a light blue shirt, and I have a cluttered home office in the background. I'm really happy to talk about our vision for this coming academic year in bringing the 1,000 Cut journey to campus. And what I'd like to really describe is sort of an arc of activities that will accompany the experience. And this basically will cover from late October all the way through April. So the first idea is that we want to make sure that students, faculty, even community members have access to this experience. And so we will have the exhibit, have the experience travel around campus. We'll have it set up at the USEN, the riverfront, the White Building, the library, French Hall, and the Murchie Science Building. This hopefully will maximize the opportunities for people to experience this. But we want it not just to be about the virtual reality experiences, which is what the Thousand Cuts journey is, but rather we want to build around it learning activities and potential for people to talk about their experience. And so we want to think about developing learning communities. Also, maybe in the spirit of informed consent in terms of human subjects protection, we want to make sure that participants are aware of what they will be experiencing and have resources after that experience in case they would need to talk with somebody about how they're feeling or their reactions to it. One really exciting potential is that Dr. Cogburn at Columbia University spoke about the possibilities of having her Masters of Social Work students facilitate focus groups here on campus. So again, after people experience the Thousands Cut journey, we'll be able to hopefully have rich dialogue with our peers about that experience. And then if all goes well, everything will culminate with Dr. Cogburn's keynote lecture in April. So I wanted to just give you a sense of Dr. Cogburn is an associate professor of social work at Columbia University. And I wanted to give you one sense of an image that I really remember, and I was able to preview the experience. And that was the interaction with the police. And so in that way, I think it was very powerful. And if you have an opportunity, I really encourage you to check this out. So with the generous assistance of Jason Gooding and his esports team, we've set up the experience in Riverfront. So if you're interested, reach out to Jason. Maybe he can arrange to have you experience it before it comes to campus. Also, too, we've spoken with David and I have spoken with Dr. Cogburn and shared with her our vision to have this be not just the experience, but really an arc of activities. And she was very supportive of that. And then finally, she agreed to come in April. And so we're working out the details of the dates, but we're very hopeful that she will be able to be on campus. And I think our campus will be really primed for her visit. We'll have this year-long sets of activities, and I think we'll have an extremely engaging conversation when she arrives. So our immediate steps now is really to obtain the beta version for the Quest 2 software, which is a little easier to deal with, and then to continue working with Dr. Cogburn on the programming around this experience. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roy. And before you turn your camera off, oh, I missed you. Do you think you could give a brief description of what the Thousand Cut journey is exactly? I mean, you described that it's a virtual reality thing and we saw the screenshot, but can you tell a little bit more about what it is?
Yeah, certainly. So the Thousand Cuts journey is about an 8-minute experience, and you put on a virtual reality headset, and then you take on the persona of an African-American younger child, an adolescent, and as an adult. And there are 3 scenarios that you experience. One is being singled out in the classroom for disruptive behavior, regardless of whether you were involved in that. The second is, and that was the photo was taken from, was an encounter with the police. And that's, as I said, I think that's a pretty intense experience. And then the third experience is, as an adult, you've just finished, I believe, their Masters of Business Administration, and they are essentially ignored from the person who is doing the interviewing, and assuming that the other person in the room is the person who has the prestigious background. And so in all of the situations, you are put in the position of a person of color at various stages in your life, and you experience, albeit virtually, what it's like to be singled out, discriminated against, and harassed. So I think it's not only an important tool in empathy building, which a lot of people say that this is, but I actually think, and Dr. Cogburn really emphasized this in our discussion, to really emphasize that this is a tool for social justice and for diversity, equity, inclusion, that we cannot address these issues unless we have a much more visceral feeling for why this is important and why we need to be doing this work.
Great. Thank you, Roy. So I would like to highlight a few other initiatives that are ongoing. And again, if you have at any point have any questions about any of these initiatives or would like to get involved further in them, please feel free to contact me. So first, a handful of initiatives have been funded through our DEI Initiatives Grant Program, which leverages our expertise to financially support projects throughout the institution that contribute to our DEI goals and support student retention and success. Details on these projects are available at the DEI website. Additionally, we are highlighting our DEI expertise through our regular DEI scholarship spotlights, with the next spotlight later this month featuring Roy Barnes. If you have scholarship and knowledge that you would like to share with our campus, please let me know. We are also actively pursuing external funding for DEI initiatives with a number of proposals underway through the Urban Institute for Racial, Economic, and Environmental Justice under the leadership of Jan Furman, and other proposals as well. We know that there are foundations and agencies looking to fund this work, and we're working to compete for more of this funding. We are currently also adopting a process for receiving and addressing student concerns about the campus climate in meaningful ways to better contribute to a climate that cultivates a sense of belonging for all of our students. More information will be communicated about this very soon, but this is something that will really help us respond to climate concerns from the students directly as they experience them and contribute to their satisfaction, retention, and success. On the curricular side, Chris Lewis, Director of Graduate Programs, and I have been exploring with interested deans and graduate program directors the possibility of an interdisciplinary graduate level certificate, DEI certificate at U of M-Flint. We've looked at certificates at other institutions and are looking at our current course offerings in all of our colleges and schools, as well as assessing key competencies that we think as we think about what structure would make sense for this. We would welcome any additional thoughts or feedback as we engage in this. On the facilities side, Samara Howe highlighted the menstrual products in all restrooms. We're also pursuing expanding all gender restrooms, lactation rooms, and reflection rooms on our campus in conjunction with facilities. I continue to offer professional development to local and regional business partners related to how to become a more equitable organization. In partnership with business engagement, this is a way to expand our DEI impact in the region and also to generate revenue for the institution. Internally, professional development continues to be provided for students through the Social Justice Leadership Series, in partnership with Student Involvement in Leadership, the Intercultural Center, and the Center for Gender and Sexuality. Additionally, we've opened up this series to faculty and staff who are interested in an effort to provide more opportunities for us all to learn and grow. Because our DEI work takes collective effort, we know the benefits of diverse teams, and in our unique roles within the institution, we'll all see different opportunities to become more inclusive and equitable. I hold weekly virtual focus groups with groups of faculty and staff to hear about their experiences, needs, ideas, and concerns related to DEI. These have proven very valuable and continue to inform our priorities and initiatives. Finally, we're looking at ways to better coordinate campus-wide programming for MLK Day, Black History Month, Women's History Month, and others. More information about this will be forthcoming with an opportunity to engage more directly in the campus-wide programming for those who are interested. So clearly there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people working on it and engaged in this work, but we are always open to feedback. I want to thank you all for attending, and I want to invite Roy Barnes back to close out this year's DEI Summit. So Roy.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. And As co-chair of the DEI committee at the University of Michigan-Flint, I'm very excited about we have in store. Very proud of the work that everybody is doing. And if you have any questions, we still have a few minutes, and we welcome, I'm not sure exactly how that would go, but we welcome any comments, or you can throw something in the chat, I believe. And so, we have a few minutes. If you have any questions that are burning, please feel free to ask them, or send an email to flintodei@umich.edu. And then you can always reach David and me in person through our own emails. So thank you again.